श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। नमः सभाभ्यः सभापतिभ्यश्च वो नमः। वागीशाद्याः सुमनसः सर्वार्थानामुपक्रमे यन्नत्वा कृतकृत्यास्युस्तन्नमामि गजाननं। शारदा शारदाम्भोजवदना वदनाम्बुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं क्रियात्। सत्यज्ञानसुखस्वरूपममलं क्षीराब्धिमध्यस्थितं योगारूढमतिप्रसन्नवदनं भूषा सहस्रोज्ज्वलं त्यक्षं चक्रपिनाकसाभयवरान् बिभ्राणमर्कच्छविं छत्रीभूतफणीन्द्रमिन्दुधवलं लक्ष्मीं नृसिंहं भजे। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तं पङ्कीकृतमभूद्यया किङ्करीयस्य सामाया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये। प्रह्लादवरदो देवो यो नृसिंहः परो हरिः नृसिंहोपासकं नित्यं तन्नृसिंहगुरुं भजे। श्रीसच्चिदानन्दशिवाभिनव्यनृसिंहभारत्यभिधान्यतीन्द्रान् विद्यानिधीन् मन्त्रनिधीन् सदात्मनिष्ठान् भजे मानवशम्भुरूपान्। सदात्मध्याननिरतं विषयेभ्यः पराङ्मुखं नौमि शास्त्रेषु निष्णातं चन्द्रशेखरभारतीं। विवेकिनं महाप्रज्ञं धैर्यौदार्यक्षमानिधिं सदाभिनवपूर्वं तं विद्यातीर्थगुरुं भजे। अज्ञानाञ्जाह्नवीतीर्थं विद्यातीर्थं विवेकिनां सर्वेषां सुखदन्तीर्थं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये। विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विधुशेखरभारतीं। प्रमाणनखनिर्भिन्नमहामोहामरारये नमस्कुर्मो नृसिंहाय स्वप्रकाशचिदात्मने। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Namaskaram everyone. So among the festivals that we celebrate, whether it be in Sanatana Dharma or even Shringerian specific, Nrisimha Jayanti holds a very important place. So while all the avatars have Jayantis, there is Matsya Jayanti, Kurma Jayanti, lesser known, but the tithis are still marked out in or Dharma Shastras. You can find them in Dharma Sindhu, a very common text. Though that is the case, three Jayantis to us stand out. Rama Jayanti, which we call Rama Navami, not Jayanti per se. Krishna Jayanti, Krishna Ashtami, as well as Narasimha Jayanti, Narasimha Jayanti. So these three festivals are celebrated with special regard, both again across India and as well as Shringerian specific. Acharyas do Vishesha Puja during those times. All these three are not just pujas to be done that day, but if you look at our Dharma Shastras, there are vratas that have to be done. So for a lot of these, for Nrisimha Jayanti, for example, the acharana, the observance of Nrisimha Jayanti actually starts the night before. So upavasa is to be done. Then the next day there's an avahana mantra to be done. There are certain bhojanas to be performed. There are certain pujas that are to be done. And then the end of that day, whichever Chaturdashi has Sayankala, you do Parayana of the Nrisimha Avirbhava then. And then the day after that, the vrata is finished. So among these traditions that accompany Nrisimha Jayanti is the Parayana of Narasimha's Avirbhava, of the event where he emerges from the pillar in Srimad Bhagavata, which is one of the 18 Puranas written by Vedavyasa Maharshi. So even to this day, our Acharyas do Parayana of that Adhyaya in Bhagavatam after the puja is over. So because the Bhagavatam story is very common in popular culture and in tradition, the Bhagavatam narrative of Nrisimha Jayanti is of the Narasimha Katha is very popular. Hiranyakashipu gets the varas. Prahlada is a great Vishnu Bhakta. He gets punished by the father. Then he asks where Vishnu is. Prahlada says everywhere. He asks for the pillar. Narasimha comes from the pillar and kills Hiranyakashipu. So this narrative is one that is very common. However, various Puranas, almost all the 18 Puranas have their own account of Narasimha Charitra. So in Matsya Purana, it is not a Narasimha that comes per se, but is a Simha, a lion itself is what comes. And then in other Puranas, there are some Narasimha stories that actually do not involve Prahlada or Hiranyakashipu at all. In Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, there is no mention made of Narasimha in Prahlada Charitra. So Prahlada is still a Vishnu Bhakta that opposes the father. But Narasimha is not mentioned by name. It is just said that Vishnu appears. In some Puranas, there is even a case where Hiranyakashipu reforms. He turns into a Vishnu Bhakta after he sees that Vishnu is everywhere. So there are many narratives of the Narasimha tale in our Puranas. However, it is important to remember when dealing with Puranic lore that these are not conflicting versions of the same story, but different aspects of the same truth. So these happen in kalpas, right? A kalpa is a cycle, a cosmic cycle. So if there are any discrepancies among the Puranas, they say kalpa bhedat. This is to be understood that different stories happened in different ways in different kalpas. So as history repeats itself, Narasimha Charitra happened in one way in one kalpa, in another way in another kalpa. Which is why these all hold truth to them. These are all written by Vyasa Maharshi with some philosophical background in mind. These are not stories that are written for fun. They're either meant to teach about the Devata or teach about some Vedantic concept via symbolism. So, in that same vein, I was thinking today we could look at the NRISIMHAVATARA from Harivamsha. So, Harivamsha is what is called a Khilabhaga from Mahabharata. So, it is a supplementary portion, it is not part of the text proper. It is not part of the text proper. But that being said, it is still important, written as part of Mahabharata, and it is to be studied in conjunction with the 18 Parvas. So, in that, the Narasimhavatara occurs in the Bhavishya Parva. So, there are three Parvas in Harivamsha. In that, Bhavishya Parva is one of them. The 41st through 47th Adhyayas contain Narasimha Charitra. So, in that, we will look at what Vyasa Maharshi has told us, what the differences are from Bhagavata, and what the underlying Vedantic philosophy of this story is. So here I have the printout because generally when you do Purana Patana, it is hard to remember all the shlokas. So I'll just read the relevant shlokas and then we can discuss the meaning as needed. So it starts Vaishampayano Vacha, just as in Mahabharata, Vaishampayana is telling this. वाराह एष कथितः नरसिंहमतः शृणु यत्र भूत्वा मृगेन्द्रेण हिरण्यकशिपुर्हतः. So this is the beginning of the adhyaya. So Vaishampayana is telling Janamejaya Maharaja. He says, I have told you about Varaha Avatara. So now let me tell you about the Nrisimha Avatara, wherein Hiranyakashipu was killed by Mrigendra. Mrigendra means just a lion. So not Narasimha, just Simha. And you will see throughout the course of this charitra, Narasimha will be referred to as just a Simha, Mrigendra, Mrigadhipa, Simha. But wherever it says that, we can understand it to mean Narasimha because in the text here, it specifically says Kritva Narasya Ardhatanam, Simhasya Ardhatanam Tatha. It says. So because the text specifically says that this was half human, half lion, we can take the word lion throughout all of this to mean Narasimha, not just Simha. So it starts from the Krita Yuga, where Hiranyakashipu is doing tapas. Pura Krita Yuge Rajan Hiranyakashipu Prabhu Daityanam Adipurushas Chakara Sumahattapaha. So in Krita Yuga, Hiranyakashipu, who was the foremost among Rakshasas, did great tapas. And then as part of that tapas, Dashavarsha Sahasrani Shatani Dashapanchacha Jalavasi Samabhavat Sthanamauna Vratasthitaha. So for 10,000 years, and then Shatani Dasha Panchacha, and then for another 1500 years he did tapas, and the vratas he followed were Jalavasi, he stood in water, Sthana Mauna Vratasthitaha. Mauna, he was following silence, and Sthana, he was standing generally on one leg. But what did Brahma come down for? Right? This is one thing to take away. Tata shamadamabhyancha brahmacharyena chaivahi brahma prito bhavattasya tapasa niyamena cha. So Brahma was pleased by his tapas and his niyama. So, these are two things that, Hiranyakashipu is a Rakshasa, he can do whatever he wants. But there are some things that we too should be able to draw away from this, right? So, tapas is common to everyone, regardless of whether they be a Rakshasa or, or a human or a Devata. We will see later. Vishnu talks about the tapas of, or Brahma talks about Hiranyakashipu's tapas with the Devatas. But what was it that caused Hiranyakashipu's tapas to bear fruit? And what was it that caused Brahma to be pleased with him? Shama Damabhyam. So he followed Shama and Dama. Shama is Nigraha of the Manas, control of the mind. Dama is control of the outer body. So if you can follow those, and then Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is translated in several ways. If you are not married, it translates to celibacy. If you are married, it translates to fidelity. But even that aside, Brahmacharya means intense focus on studies and Brahma sadhana. That is what Brahmacharya. Brahmani charati iti brahmachari, and then the nature of that is Brahmacharya. So the quest for Brahman, he who is ever engrossed in trying to know Brahman. So basically, someone that does sadhana with that in mind is a brahmachari. That nature is called brahmacharya. So these are the things that cause tapas to fructify. So if we can follow these in our daily lives, some of that will accrue as tapas, which is why later in a different place in Mahabharata, I think in the Yaksha Prashnas, the Yaksha says to Yudhishthira, what is dharma? Ko dharma? And then Yudhishthira replies, tapas sadharma vartitvam. The performance of one's duty properly is tapas. So if you can follow these while doing one's duty every day, that will count as tapas. So then Brahma comes and asks Hiranyakashipu, Pritosmi tava bhaktasya tapasanena suvrata varam varaya bhadrante yatheshtam kamam apnuhi. So he says, I'm very happy with your tapas, yatheshtam kamam varaya. Ask for whatever it is that you want. Now, we must pay particular attention to Hiranyakashipu's varas here. Because in Bhagavata, there were certain loopholes in the varas that Hiranyakashipu asked for. For example, he asks for, I do not want to be killed day or night, outside or inside, by man or animal. And then in the end, he says, or by anything that you, Brahma, have created. So there's a massive loophole right there. But here the varas are slightly different. So he says, Na devasura gandharvaha, na yakshoraga rakshasaha, na manushah pishachascha nihanyurmam kathanchana. Devas, rakshasas, yakshas, uragas, so sarpas, rakshasas, manushyas, humans, pishachas, these should not kill me. That is one vara. Rishayo naiva mam kruddhaha sarvaloka pitamaha shepeyuho tapasa yuktaha vara esha vritomaya. This is a very clever vara. This Harivamsha Hiranyakashipu seems to be a lot smarter than the Bhagavata Hiranyakashipu because he puts another condition here. Rishis should not give me shapas. Rishis should never be angry with me and they should never give me shapas because he has probably studied the past where Rishis have given shapas and that causes downfall. So he says Rishis should not be mad at me and they should not give me shapas. This is another vara that he has asked. Then न शस्त्रेण न चास्त्रेण गिरिणा पादपेन च न शुष्केण न चार्द्रेण स्यान्न चान्येन मे वधः. I should not be killed by a shastra or an astra. I should not be killed by mountains or trees. I should not be killed by anything that is wet or dry. So these are the conditions that he has put. So then this concept of wet or dry actually comes from Vedic stories. So in the Vedic version of the Indra Vritra story, there Vritra asks, I should not be killed by anything that is wet or dry, which is then they use the foam of ocean waves because it is technically not wet, but it is not dry either. So in the same way, in that same vein here, Hiranyakashipu also asks, I should not be killed by anything that is wet, nor by anything that is dry. And then, Nachabhyantara Ratryanhoho, Nachapyanyena me vadhaha. I should not be killed during night or during the day. And then there is an extra vara that we do not see anywhere else. Pani praharenaikena sabhritya balavahanam yomam nashayitum shaktaha same mrityur bhavishyati. I will also designate that which can kill me. Anyone that is capable of killing me, my entire army, all my chariots, all my vahanas, with one strike of the hand, such a person should be the person that kills me. So notice he did not say someone needs to do that. Yomam nashayatum shaktaha, someone who has the capability of doing that. So he did not necessitate that whoever kills him should hit him once and destroy his armies and all at once. It is someone who has that capability can kill me, in brackets, any which way he chooses. Right? So then another interesting vara is the last one he asks is Bhaveya Maha Markascha Somo Vayur Hutashanaha Salilam Chantarikshancha Nakshatrani Disho Dasha. Very interesting vara. He asks to become the sun. I must be the sun. I must be the moon. I must be the nakshatras. I must be space. So when we say this, he means I must become the controller of all these. I must control the sun. I must control the moon. So that is the last vara that he asks for. And then Brahma says, Ete divyavarastata maya dattastavadbhutaha. So these are all very great, interesting, strange varas that you have asked for. I have given all of them. Go and be happy. And then the first thing that happens after that is they do not cut to Hiranyakashipu. They cut instead to the Devatas' reactions. So the Devatas immediately go running to Brahma after this. Deva uchuho varenanena bhagavan vadhishyati sanosuraha tat prasedasya bhagavan vadhopyasya vichintyatam. They said, Brahma, you have given this person these ridiculously strange varas. Now he will certainly kill us. Vadhishyati. He will use these for no other purpose than to torment us. So please take mercy and give us a way to kill this Rakshasa. And then Brahma replies to them, Sarvaloka hitam vakyam shrutva devah prajapatihi. He hears the Devata's words and he says, Avashyam tridashaha tena praptavyam tapasaf phalam. He says, you cannot stop anyone from gaining the phala of their tapas. So this is a common question we get. They say, why did Shiva give Rakshasa that vara? Or why did Brahma give Rakshasa that vara? They had no choice. It is like cashing a check in the bank, right? Whether he pulls it out to buy some, improper substance, or whether he pulls it out to give a donation to a charity, there is nothing the bank can do about it. So in the same way, he says, Avashyam Tridashaha, He Tridashaha, O Devatas, Avashyam Tena Tapasaf Phalam Praptavyam. He must obtain the phala of his tapas. There is no other way around it. But there is a way out. Tapasonte sa Bhagavan Vadham Vishnu Karishyati. This tapas phala will run out at some point. Right? Hanuman says the same thing to Ravana and Sundarakanda. He says, until now, you have enjoyed luxuries due to the punyas of your tapas, but now the papa is coming in. So in the same way here, by the time the tapas runs out, Vishnu will certainly kill him in accordance with all the stipulations I have given. So it's not like the Devatas had a choice. They said okay and went back to doing whatever they were doing. And then in the meantime, Hiranyakashipu, of course, does exactly what the Devatas expected him to do. Labdhamatre vare tasmin. The second after he got those varas, sarvaso badhata prajaha. He immediately set upon, um, you know, tormenting the people of this universe. Hiranyakashipur Daityo Varadanena Darpitaha. He was maddened, or he was, arrogant due to these varas. Ashrameshu Munin Sarvan Brahmanan Shamsitavratan Satyadharma Ratan Dantan Dharshayamasa Viryavan. So he went to the ashramas. He made sure to torment those munis. He went to all the rishis. He went to those who are Shamsitavrataha. This also comes in Bhagavad Gita, Yatesh Shamsitavrataha, and it is actually a term taken from, at least Madhusudana Saraswati explains there, from Yoga Shastra. So Shamsitavrata means those people who follow ahimsa, brahmacharya, tapas, shaucha, swadhyaya without regards to where they are. Right? So some people will only follow ahimsa as long as it does not harm them, like a soldier. Right? He will follow ahimsa outside the battlefield, but in the battlefield he will not. In the same way, kings will generally follow satya outside the realms of public affairs, but it is written in Niti Shastra that kings will have to lie at some point or the other during their political procedures. So in the same way, most people have limits to where they can follow these dharmas, but those who follow these dharmas, come what may, in whatever situation, are called Shamsita Vrata. So obviously very noble souls, very rigid souls. And he was targeting those people as well. So what happens with that is the Punya Phala becomes finished quicker and the Papa Phala sets in more soon. So then the Devatas go to Narayana. They say, Tvam hinaf paramo devaha brahmadinam surottama tvam padmamala patraksha shatrupaksha bhayavaha kshayaya ditivamshasya akshayaya bhavanaf prabho trayasva jahidaityendram hiranyakashibam prabho. So they straight up ask Vishnu, please find out a way to destroy the Rakshasas and protect us. And then Vishnu makes a promise to them. He says, Bhayam tiradhvam amaraha abhayam vo dadamyaham. So please relinquish your fear. I'm giving you all refuge. I will destroy Eshate Saganam Daityam Varadanena Darpitam Avadhyam Amarendranam Danavendram Nihanyam. I know you cannot kill him. Amarendranam Avadhyam. I know he is unkillable by the gods, but I will find a way to kill him. And Tathaiva Tridivandeva Pratipatsyath Machiram. You will get back control of Swarga very soon. So then, Evamuktvasa Bhagavan Visrajya Tridavaukasaha. So then Vishnu gave them all that, reassurance, and then Evam Sankalpayitva to Hiranyakashipur Vadhaha. He then resolved to kill Hiranyakashipu that day. Sochirenaiva Kalena Himavat Parshvamagataha. He went to Himalaya Parvatas then to do the next steps. So it is important to keep in mind that the Himalayas are generally yoga bhumis. These are places where yogis do tapas. It is not just a scenic mountain. So from here on outwards, we will look at the tattvic nature of this story. So Hiranyakashipu is none other than Ajnana. So Ajnana leads to the Ahankara that caused him to torment everyone around him. And to get rid of that, Bhagavan, Ishvara, needs to do certain things. And on a parallel level, the sadhaka, so the Jivatma, also needs to do certain things to cast off that Ajnana that leads to the bondage of samsara. So from here on out, we will see how that plays out in these stories. So then he chose a very specific form. Yet siddhikaramashu syat vadhaya. So he chose a very specific form that was conducive to the destruction of that Rakshasa. So what he did was anutpannam tataschakre sotyantam rupamastitah narasimhamanadhrishyam daityadanava rakshasam. So he chose then the Narasimha form. So, and it is anutpannam, it was unborn previously. So basically, no one had seen such a form before that. An unprecedented form was that he took. And then sahayantu mahabahur jagra honkaram evacha adhonkara sahayoso bhagavan vishnu. So he took upon the onkara as his sahaya, as a help. Right. So what does this mean that he took Onkara as Sahaya? So there in the Vyakhya they write Onkararthasya Sarvatmyasya Sandhanam Kritva. So Onkara refers to Sarvatma. So the meaning of Onkara is Sarvatmya. So the nature of Atma being Sarva is Sarvatma, Sarvatmya. So this Onkara, because Onkara being the Shabda that represents Paramatma, that is Sarvavyapi. So Onkara is a Sarvavyapi Shabda. Onkara is a sound that pervades all. So taking upon that Onkara means taking upon the all-pervadingness of Onkara. He took upon this specific Narasimha form. So we're how in the same way how in Bhagavata, right, we have Prahlada hold, declare that Bhagavan is present, right? Yadita sarvatra kasmat stambhena drishyate is the words from Bhagavata. So that is not said outright here, but by saying that Omkara Shakti was infused into this form, by saying that Omkara Shakti was infused into this form, here Vedavyasa is giving us the hint that this avatara was imbued with the quality of Sarvavyapakatva. So then he, how did that look? Athonkara sahayoso Bhagavan Vishnuravyeha Hiranyakashiposthanam Jagama Prabhurishvaraha. So he set out to Hiranyakashipu's palace. And how did that Rupam look? Terasa Bhaskarakaraha Kantya Chandra Ivaparaha Narasya Kritvardhatanam Simhasyardhatanam Vibhu. So then by the splendor it looked like the sun, by the light it looked like the moon, meaning he was as resplendent as the sun, but the color was that of the moon. So he is white in color. This Narasimha form is pure white in color, just like Shiva is. So then um, Narasimhena vapusha panim samsprashya panina. I highlighted this one line because this comes in all the Puranas. Apparently, whenever Narasimha sets out to kill Hiranyakashipu, panim samsprashya panina. He does this with his hands. He touches his hands with his hands, right? He uses one hand to touch the other. So generally that is done whenever you're preparing for something or planning. But this too has Vedic origins. In the Vedic telling of the Indra Vritra battle, there, Indra also touches his hands with the other hand before killing Vritrasura. So the reason I say this is because the Vedic background of Indra killing Vritrasura is what is played out in the Puranic nature. Because in Veda, Indra is Paramatma. Of course, here is Narasimha is Paramatma. There, Vritra represents the Asuric tendencies. Here, Hiranyakashipu represents the Asuric tendencies. So a lot of the same themes and motifs that are found in the Vedic tellings of the Indra Vritra battle are found here. So this touching of the hand with the hand is another such theme that is brought out here. So then he goes to the Hiranyakashipu's sabha. So the place where Hiranyakashipu is staying, the place where Ajnana is dwelling, the place where Ahankara is flourishing, he goes there and he sees Tato Pashyata Vistirnam Divyam Ramyam Manoramam Sarvakama Yudam Shubhram Hiranyakashipu's sabham. He sees Hiranyakashipu's sabha. So Narasimha goes to the sabha. There is no breaking of the pillar and him emerging in the sabha. Narasimha sets out from that Himalaya Parvata where he took upon this form to Hiranyakashipu's sabha. And what is that sabha like? It is divya. It is, very beautiful, ramyam, manoramam, and vistirnam yojana shatam. It apparently extended for 100 yojanas. A yojana is about 8 miles in today's speech. Yojana shatam, shatam adhyardham uchratam, and it is shatam adhyardham. So 100 and half of that. So 150 yojanas high, tall. So the prakara, the prasadas were 150 yojanas in height, and the entire thing itself was 100 yojanas in length. And there is a long description here of everything that was contained within that sabha. Now, quite frankly, there is no reason to do that. They talk about Vyasa Maharshi talks about all the different types of trees that were there, all the different types of waters that flowed there, are the different types of gems that were studied there. And the reason why he does that is, we will come to that in a later shloka, but basically anything that the senses could want could be found in that sabha. So wherever ajnana flourishes, this addiction to sense organs will be there, which is why you have drumancha vividhan, druman bahuvidhan tatra mrigendro dadushe drutam. So the mrigendra saw a lot of trees there, and then there is a lot of description of the types of trees and the flowers there. Nalinaih pundarike shatapatte sugandhibhi rakteh kuvalayaihi neelaihi kumudaihi sanyutani cha. So padmas, kumudas, all these different types of flowers were there. There were also fruit trees, kharjuraah nalikelascha pugavrikshaah, हरीतकी मधुकाः सप्तपर्णाश्च बिल्वाः पारावतास्तथा पनसाश्च तमालाश्च नाना गुल्मलतावृताः लताश्च विविधाकाराः पत्रपुष्पफलोपगाः. So lots of fruit bearing trees were also there. एते चान्येत्र च बहवः तत्र काननजा द्रुमाः नाना पुष्पफलोपेताः व्यराजन्त समन्ततः. So there are all of these trees there, a lot of and other things. They will talk about the gems that are there. नक्षुत्पिपासे न ग्लानिं प्राप्यतां प्राप्नुवन्तिः नानारूपैः विरचिताः विचित्रैः अतिभास्वरैः. So there it is very specifically stated. No one in that sabha had kshut or pipasa. No one there had hunger or thirst, because everything they wanted to eat was there, everything they wanted to drink was there. And then stambhair manimayir divyaihi shashwati cha akshatta cha sa atichandran cha suryan cha pavakan cha swayam prabha. So it was uh, there were a lot of stambhas there. Narasimha did not come out of any of them, but there were a lot of stambhas there that were gem studded. So tasyam sabhayam daityendro hiranyakashipah prabhu asinam asine divye nalvamatre pramanatah. So there Narasimha Swami went there and saw Hiranyakashipu seated on the throne. Hiranyakashipu's throne, just to tell us that we cannot think of Puranic stories in human terms, because that throne was Asane Divye Nalva Matre. A Nalva is Hasta Chatushatam, 400 hands. Okay, so if you take a general grown man's hand and you put that 400 times, that asana, the seat he was sitting in, was that wide. So if you take one hand, I think is about half a foot, right? So if you take half a foot, the seat he's sitting in is 200 feet long. So hopefully, we have not seen that in the human world for one person to sit. Generally, that will be several school benches put together. So this is clearly not something that is talked about in human terms. It is a very large throne, Puranic terms. We cannot touch the logic of the physics of Puranas. So it is a very massive asana that Hiranyakashipu was sitting on. And Kanaka Vimala Hara Bhushitangam Diditanayam Sa Mrigadhipo Dadarsha Dinakara Dinakarakara Prabham Jwalantam Asura Sahasraganeir Nishevyamanam. So Hiranyakashipu was studded with all the ornaments. Around him were there is another long description of all the Rakshasas' names. We do not need to do Rakshasa Nama Parayana for right now, so I'm skipping this. But he was surrounded by all the Rakshasas, all the armies, the mantris, the Dandanayakas, all were around him. And Narasimha saw that Rakshasa. And at the same time, Hiranyakashipu's mantris and his balas and his army chiefs and all of them also saw Narasimhaswami. So now we have the entrance of Prahlada. So we are now at the 43rd Adhyaya. Nrasimhan Drishtva Danavanam Vismayaha Prahlada Vakyancha. That is the name that is given to this Adhyaya. So the surprise of the Danavas having seen this Narasimha, and then what Prahlada said. ततो दृष्ट्वा महाबाहुं कालचक्रमिवागतं नारसिंहवपुश्छन्नं भस्माच्छन्नमिवानलम्. Vyasa Maharshi's poetry is also very nice. We will see that in due course throughout this. Bhagavan, Paramatma, was veiled by the Narasimha form as fire is veiled by ash or by smoke. You can take it that way. So, and he looked like Kala Chakramivagatam, like death itself had come to that sabha. विकुञ्चित सटं तस्य नारसिंहस्य भारत रूपोदार्यं बभौ तत्र सहस्य शिशन्निभम्. The mane of Narasimha looked like 1,000 moons. अहो रूपमिदं चित्रं शङ्खकुन्देन्दु सन्निभम् अब्रुवन् दानवाः सर्वे हिरण्यकशिपुश्च सह. So all the Rakshasas and Hiranyakashipu were surprised that there was such a resplendent form that had suddenly, come into the sabha. And then while these Rakshasas were speaking, something very interesting happened. Because when you see a form that is clearly alaukika, right? You have seen a form that is clearly not of this world. You have seen a form that is shining like 1,000 moons. Surely you must have the idea that this is not an animal, right? This is some devata or some higher power that has come. But the Rakshasas did not get that idea. Esha hi bravatam tesham, evam hi bravatam tesham, nirdagdhanam mahatmanam, narasimhena chakshadbhyam chodita kaladharmana. So, Narasimha, with his eyes, forced them to become deluded that he was just an animal that was there. The glance of Narasimha's eyes caused them to lose all reason. Isn't that very unfair of Bhagavan? It is not, because they say that they were nirdagdha. They were already very prideful, their eyes were already closed. So, therefore, Bhagavan's eyes caused them to fall into further delusion. Because Bhagavan also saw Prahlada. Look what Prahlada now says. Hiranyakashipof putra Prahlado nama viryavan divyena chakshusha simham apashyad devam agatam. So Prahlada, who was the son of Hiranyakashipu, who was viryavan. Virya does not just refer to valor, but Virya refers to tapas. Virya refers to tapas. So one who had a lot of austerity built up. He looked at the Simha not with the normal eyes, but Divyena Chakshusha. With Divya Drishti, he looked at the Simha. Now, although Narasimha looked at everyone, those Rakshasas were unable to see him properly because they were Nirdagdha. Prahlada was able to see him properly because he was Viryavan. He had austerity. So that is the difference. The more tapas, the more austerity, the more rigor we follow in our lives, in our sadhana, the easier it will be for us to see Bhagavan. The more arrogant we become, the more engrossed we become in sense pleasures, obviously, the harder it is for us to understand Bhagavan. So, Prahlada sees this and he immediately tells Hiranyakashipu what he sees. Maharaj Mahabaho Daityanam Adisambhava Nashrutam Naiva Drashtancha Narasimham Idam Vapuhu. This form that consists of a half human, half lion has never been seen before, has never been heard of before. So it is not there in popular legend, nor has it been seen anywhere. But there is something very interesting about this form. Avyakta prabhavam divyam kimidam rupam adbhutam daityanta karanam ghoram shamsativa manam sinaha. My heart tells me that this form is meant to bring about the destruction of all the Rakshasas here. But now comes to the very interesting part. अस्य देवा शरीरस्थाः सागरा सरितस्तथा हिमवान् पारियात्रश्च ये चान्ये कुलपर्वताः चन्द्रमाः सह नक्षत्रैः आदित्याः चाश्विनौ तथा धनदो वरुणश्चैव यमः शक्रश्च चीपतिः. He says, I see all the devatas in this lion's body. So it is kind of the opposite to what happened in Bhagavata. There, Prahlada saw Narasimha in everything. Here, Prahlada is seeing everything in Narasimha. A small difference, not a big one, but a very beautiful one to note nonetheless. So there he says Bhagavan is in everything. Here he says everything is in Bhagavan. So asya devaha sharirasthaha. So in his body I see the devatas, the sagaras, all the oceans of this body, saritaha, all the rivers that exist in this world, himavan pariyatra. So there are 7 kulaparvatas, right? Himavan pariyatrascha, himavan gandhamadanaha, vindhyascha pariyatrascha, saptaite kulaparvataha. So these 7 kulaparvatas I see in his body. All the mountains of this world are in his body. Chandrama, the moon, Saha Nakshatrihi, all the stars, all the constellations, the Ashwini Devatas, the Adityas, Varuna, Yama, Dhanada, so Kubera, I see all of them in his body. And I also see Sarvam, and now Prahlada says one more thing, whether this is what Prahlada said or how Vyasa Maharshi describes it. It tells us the nature of the relationship of the world to Bhagavan. So, yes, you see the entire Vishwa as in within Vishnu, right? Vishwam Vishnu. That is why Vishnu Sahasranama starts with those two, because the relationship of those two is what determines our ability to understand Bhagavan. But the how this world appeared inside Bhagavan is being told in this shloka. Sarvam tribhuvanam rajan lokam loka dharmascha shashwataha drishyate narasimhesmin yathendau vimalam jagat. So just as the entire earth is seen in the moon, in the same way I see this entire world in Bhagavan. So there is one yogic samaya, it is called. A samaya is something that is not scientifically true. Our forefathers also knew that, but they accepted it for the sake of Vyavahara. So there is one saying that because the moon is so white, sometimes it acts as a mirror to mirror the earth in it. Or you can also take it as during an eclipse, the shadow of the earth falls on the moon, right? So at that point, what is being seen? The bimba, right? The pratibimba is a reflection or a shadow, properly a reflection. You can also stretch it slightly to mean a shadow. If you take the yogic narrative, it is directly a reflection. So what happens is the reflection of the earth falls on the moon. So what Prahlada is saying here is, I see the world in Bhagavan as the reflection of the earth is seen in the moon. So basically, this world is a pratibimba. So Bhagavan is bimba, right? Jiva or Jagat is the pratibimba, the reflection. Bhagavan's projection is this world. So that is being shown here. Not just that everything. So the surface level is, so the entire earth, though the earth is bigger than the moon, right? The entire earth can be seen in the moon. Like the shadow of the entire earth is in the moon. So what the surface level of this simile is that this entire world can be compressed into this lion's body. But what the inner meaning is, what the philosophical meaning is this world appears as the reflection or as the projection of the background, the adhishthana, that is this Paramatma that has come. So Prahlada sees this with his eye. This is the difference between Prahlada and the other Rakshasas. You will see these Rakshasas do some truly funny stuff later on as they fight Narasimha. But Prahlada, for his part, had a proper understanding of Bhagavan and therefore was able to see this entire world within Bhagavan. So, Sanatkumarascha Mahanubhavo Vishwascha Devapsarasascha Sarvah Krodhascha Kamascha Tathaiva Harshah Darpascha Mohah Pitarascha Sarve Ityeva Muktva Sacha Daityarajam Hiranyanamaanam Avismayena Dadhyo Sadaityeshwara Putra Ugram Mahamati Kinchit Adhomukha Prak. So, the reason I chose these shlokas is it is not just the physical aspects of the world that Prahlada saw. He saw dhriti, courage, smriti, remembrance, rajas, sattva, tapas, dama, krodha, kama, harsha, so happiness, darpa, moha. He saw these bhavas in Bhagavan too. So, not just physical embodiments in the world, but all the feelings that we have are also from Bhagavan, right? In Bhagavad Gita, you have matta smritir jnanam apohanancha, right? Jnanam, apohanam, all of that comes from me. So, not just the physical things in this world, but the abstract concepts of this world as well, all originate from Bhagavan. So, Prahlada was able to see those two in this Narasimha Sharira that had come to the Sabha. So, then he told Hiranyakashipu that, this is the situation, and he did not bother to argue with Hiranyakashipu later on. He just told him this, and then Ugram Dadhyav. So as we know, Ugra is, Ugram Viram is the beginning of the Mantra Raja of Narasimha. So Ugra is a very important word when it comes to Narasimha, but Ugram Dadhyav. He then did dhyana of Narasimha, turned, faced east, and remained silent. So Prahlada basically just told Hiranyakashipu who had come and what he saw there, and then he remained silent, turned east, and did dhyanam of the form that had just come. So then this ends Prahlada's role in this story. Prahlada does not come up anymore. Then Hiranyakashipu comes. Let us see what Hiranyakashipu's reflection is. Prahladasya tatshritva Hiranyakashipur vachaha. He heard Prahlada's words and then Uvacha Danavan Sarvan Saganan. He told the Rakshasas, his orders were Mrugendro Grihyatam Shigram Apurvam Tanumastitaha Yadiva Samshayah Kashchid Vadhyatam Vanagocharaha. Vanagocharaha. This lion should have stayed in the forest where it came from. By mistake, it has come here. First, bind it. If you cannot bind it, then you might as well just kill it. This is not a lion from the zoo. This is Narasimha Swami. And Prahlada just told him what he saw. Even then, right? Avajananti mam mudhaha manushim tanumashritam. Right? Bhagavan says in Gita, those who are deluded, they will not know me even if I am in a human body. Krishna says there, I guess you can say, atra simhatanumastitaha. But those mudhas will not know if they are deluded. So Hiranyakashipu thought it was a normal lion that had come. So he says, just tie it up, put it in a cage. You can send it to the local zoological park. Otherwise, if it is not coming, then just kill it, as if it is something easy. Then the next thing that happened was Simhanadan Naditvatu Punas Simho Mahabalaha Babhanjatam Sabham Ramyam Vyaditasya Ivantakaha. As soon as Hiranyakashipu said this, Narasimha Swami roared. With that roar, the Sabha split in half. Govinda. Right? So the second that he said that, Narasimha Swami roared, Sabham Babhanja. Babhanja literally means to break. So whether it means that the Sabha cracked in half, right? In movies they show, some loud sound will happen and the whole thing will crack in half. Rather, we can take it that way, or you can take it that it destroyed that gathering. Right? The way people run here and there whenever there is a fire or something. In that way, that sabha, that gathering was destroyed. It was set aflame. And then all the Rakshasas started shooting astras on Narasimhaswamy. Sarva astranam adhashreshtam dandamastram subhairavam kalachakram tadhatyugram vishnachakram tadhevacha dharmachakram mahachakram ajitannamanamatah chakram aindram tadha goram rishachakram tadhevacha paitamaham tadha chakram. They all started throwing chakras. A chakra is a particular type of astra. This is the funniest part because Prahlada just told them 5 seconds earlier that he saw Indra in this body, he saw Ashwini Devatas in this body, he saw Yama in this body, and all of that, right? The first thing they do is they throw Yama's astra on him. Then they throw Vishnu Chakram. Vishnu Chakra was thrown on Vishnu. Then Dharma Chakram, Aindram Chakram, Indra's Chakra was thrown on him. Then Rishi Chakram, apparently some chakra has Rishi Shakti in it, that was thrown. Then Paitamaham, Brahma's astra was thrown there. And then Raudram Tadugram Shulancha, Rudra's astra was thrown there. Kankalam, Musalam Tatha, Brahmajirascha. So all the devatas that were shown in Narasimha's body, all those astras were being thrown on Narasimha itself. And then Astraif Prajwalit, how did those astras look around Narasimha? Astraif Prajwalitaihi Simham Avruno Dasaradhipaha Vivaswan Gharmasamaye Himavantam Ivamshubhihi Sahyamarashani Lodhutaha Daityanam Sainyasagaraha Kshanena Aplavayat Simham Mainakam Ivasagaraha. Vyasa Maharshi uses two similes here to talk about how that the Rakshasa army surrounded Narasimha there. That itself will tell us the outcome of the war. So those astras covered Narasimha the way the sun's rays cover Himavat Parvata. Part 1. Part 2. The ocean of this Daitya Sagara, the oceans of the Daitya army covered Narasimha the way the ocean covers Mainaka Parvata. So in both of these examples, the thing that is being covered is not really particularly affected by the things covering it. However much the sun shines, even if it is summer, right? It is not going to melt Himalaya. Now global warming is happening and we're losing 2 inches off the top of the mountain every year. But that aside, when people were normal, back when people used to behave responsibly, Himavan did not really melt that much. Himalayas did not really melt that much. But that is what it looked like when all the Rakshasas astras surrounded Narasimha. And the same thing with Mainaka. Chirad Jalanidho Magnaha Mainaka Iva Mardavam. Right? There are certain shlokas that say Mainaka, generally if you put anything in water for a long time, any beans like chole or something, if you put it in water, it'll soften after a while. But Mainaka, regardless of however long he has been in the ocean, he did not soften, it seems. In that same way, even if the ocean covers Mainaka, Mainaka did not soften. So although the Rakshasa army covered Narasimha, obviously it is not affecting Bhagavan in any way. So then what happened to all these astras? They all took the trouble of going to the Ayudhagara and bringing all of these. What actually happened to all these astras? Tani chakrani vadanam pravishanti vibhanti vai. Meghodharadarim ghoram chandrasurya graha iva. Tani chakrani sarvani mrigendrena mahatmana nigirnani pradiptani pavakarchya samanihi. Narasimha Swami just opened his mouth and swallowed everything that they had put in. That ends that chapter. Done. गर्जित्वा तु यथा कामं विक्रम्यञ्च यथा सुखं तत्सैन्य उत्सारितवान् तृणाग्राणि इव मारुतः. So as the wind drives dead leaves and grass before it, in that way Narasimha Swami's roar drove the Rakshasa armies before it. And then what happens is they do a maya now. So we have said that Ajnana is holding reign in this sabha, right? And all the shaktis that Ajnana has thrown upon Ishvara, all the things that it has done has not worked. So now they are using maya. So here the name of this adhyaya is Narasimha Krito Daitya Maya Nirasaha. So now they do maya. This maya, if you look, it will consist of the Panchabhutas. So the first thing that they did was they conjured a rain of stones, Prithvi. They conjured a rain of stones on Bhagavan. Tatoshma varsham daityendraha vyasrajanta nabhogataha nagamatreish shilakhandehi girikuteir mahaprabhaihi tadashma varsham simhasya gatre nipatitam mahat disho dasha prakiranam hi khadyota prakaro yatha. So they started raining rocks and mountains on Narasimha Swami. They conjured them up. So Prithvi Tattva is being brought out here. But what happened when these rocks fell on Narasimha Swami, the rocks and the mountains broke on his body and scattered in the 10 directions the way that sparks scatter. So again, that Ashma Varsha did not have any effect here. Tato Vishma Varshe Nihate. So then the rain of mountains was taken care of. Prithvi Tattva is done. What is next? Going back, Jala. Right? So next is Tatoshma Varshe Nihate Jalavarshamanantaram Dharabhirakshamatra Pradurasit Samantataha. So then the next thing they did was they conjured up torrential rains, a downpour of rains. Nabhasaf Prachita Dhara Tigmavega Sahasrasha Avranvan Savrito Vyoma Dishaschopa Dishastatha. So all the rain clouds that were bringing this rain covered the entire sky. But this water did not touch Narasimhaswami. Bahyato Vabrishe Varshaha Noparishtattu Toyadaha Mrigendra Pratirupasya Stitasya Yudhi Mayaya. The clouds covered the entire sky except the region above Narasimhaswami. So the rain that they conjured up also could not touch Narasimha. Then Hateshma Varshe Tumule. So once the Ashma Varsha, once the rain of stones was taken care of, and then Jalavarshe Shoshite, once the rains were dried up, then what is next? Agni and Vayu. Sasurjuhu Danavaha Mayam Agnim Vayuncha Sarvashaha. They then employed Vayu and Agni in the same way. Those also did not work. Narasimha destroyed those Mayas as well. So, what is this? Maya is what causes the Panchabhutas. But these Panchabhutas cannot touch Atma in any way. So that is the meaning of these Mayas. Although, Maya can do whatever it wants to the outside world, this Maya does not touch Ishvara. So then, Tasyam Pratihatayan tu Mayayam Yudhi Danavaha Sasrujur Ghora Sankasham Tamaha Sasrujur Ghora Sankasham Tamaha Tivram Samantataha. So then the last thing that remains is Avyakta, right? Besides the Panchabhutas, the last one is Avyakta, Tamas, right? Ajnana, Moha. So then the last thing that the Danavas did was, the Rakshas did was, they created Ajnana. So they created a darkness that plunged the entire Sabha into darkness. But then, Tamasa Samvrite Loke Daitye Shvatayudheshu Vai Svaterasa Parivrataha Divakara Iva Babho. Then even then Narasimha shone with his own light, right? Because Atma is Saprakasha. It shines of its own. It does not need another Pramana to illuminate it. Right? Ishvara shines of his own accord. Natatra Suryo Bhati Nachandra Tarakan Nema Vidyuto Bhanti Kutoyam Agni Tameva Bhantam Anubhati Sarvam. Tasya Bhasa Sarvamidam Vibhati, right? So, whatever light exists in this world, that light comes from him. He does not need these to illumine him. So, whatever darkness was created by the Rakshasas was dispelled by the light of Narasimha's Rupa itself. So then, once that light was, put forth, this is very cinematic. The first thing the Rakshasas saw was Trishikam Bhrukutim Chasya Dadrushar Danava Harane Lalatastham Trikutastham Gangam Tripathagamiva. They saw Narasimha's brow knotted. So when these two eyebrows go down, and then there is another furrow that will come in the middle. So you have three lines that look like Ganga flowing through Trikuta Parvata. Trikuta Parvata has three peaks. So if Ganga flows, it will split over those three peaks. So Narasimha's forehead looked like Ganga splitting over those peaks. So then, tatas sarvasu mayasu hatasu ditinandanaha Hiranyakashipum sarve nishanna sharanangata. So then all the Rakshasas came running to Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu gets angry then. So he flies into a rage. Then there is a long sarga that is we will go quickly through it, but there is a long sarga that describes all the utpatas that happen when Hiranyakashipu got angry. So yegraha sarvalokasya kshaye pradurbhavanti vai tegraha grahane drushtaha vicharanti yathasukam. So all the astronomical configurations that are seen during a pralaya appeared in the sky at that time. Ayogatascha tarasu sarveshu riksheshu sangataha. So constellations that were not supposed to touch started touching. Grahas, planets that were not supposed to collide started colliding. And then tato dhumanibha ghoraha surya divi samuthitaha. So sapta dhumanibha ghoraha. So 7 suryas rose in the sun, rose in the akasha at once. Right? And all these things happened. And then certain signs were found in nature as well. आरण्यैः सह संसृष्टा ग्राम्याश्च मृगपक्षिणः चुक्षुभुः भैरवं तत्र मृगेन्द्रे समुपस्थिते. So wild animals and domestic animals mixed and made sounds of pain. Nadyashcha pratilomahi vahanti kalushodakaha. Rivers flowed out of their normal paths with dirtied waters. अपराह्न गते सूर्ये लोकानां क्षयकारके न प्रकाशन्ति च दिशः रक्तरेणु समाकुलाः. The what we call light pollution the sun's normal light was not seen in the sky, and red lights and black lights were seen in the sky where the sun's light was supposed to be. So then Hiranyakashipu goes to Shukra and asks him what the meaning of these omens are. How he had the time for this in the middle of a battle, I don't know. Again, Puranas do not follow normal laws of physics. Sachadrishtva Mahotpatan Hiranyakashipustatha Purohitan Tada Shukram Vachanam Chedam Abhurit. He asked his Purohita what the meaning of this was, and then Shukra said, Shnurajan Navahitaha, brace yourself and listen. Yasyete Sampradrishyante Ragnyo Rashtre Mahasura Desho va hriyate tasya raja va bandhamarhati ato buddhya samikshasva yatha sarvam pranashyati. So he said, Brahad bhayan hi nachirat bhavishyati nasamshayah. He said, any place where you see these, either the king is captured, the king is killed, or the kingdom falls into ruin. So the grahas all we can put aside. But if animals are not behaving properly, there is another section where trees lose all their leaves. If trees are not being treated properly, if the akasha and if the atmosphere is not behaving the way it is supposed to behave, the result of that is that kingdom or that king or that government or whatever is sure to collapse shortly. So you can take that as an environmental message as well. So Hiranyakashipu obviously did not listen, and then he prepared himself for battle. There is a tato kriddhena daityena kampitani samantatah patala charinyah naga tejodhara shivaha or shikhaha. There is a patantara there. So then once Hiranyakashipu readied himself for battle, this entire cosmos shook. The reason I'm talking about this is here, as they go through everything that shook, they list out all the rivers that exist in Bharatavarsha. Nadi Bhagirathi Chaiva Sarayu Kaushiki Tatha Yamuna Chaiva Kaveri Krishna Verna Tatheva Cha Suverna Cha Mahabhaga Nadi Godavari Tatha Charmanvati Cha Sindhushcha Tatha Nada Nadipatihi. So all the rivers that we have in India are listed out, not just the rivers, even the deshas that we have in India are also listed out here. So Surashtrascha, so Saurashtra, what is currently Gujarat, Surashtrascha, Subahlikah, Shurabhirash, Tathaivacha, Bhoja, Pandyascha, Vangascha, Kalingaha, Tamraliptakaha, Tathaiva, Andhrascha, Pundrascha, Vamachudas, Sa Keralaha, Kshobhitastena Daityena, Sadeva, Sapsaroganaha. So, just a nice reminder that even in the Puranas we can find reminders of all the different things that exist in India, all the rivers, all there's another list of all the mountains. So, just a very Indian reminder in the Puranas that, we have there. So then, as when he readied himself, this entire world was shaking. So then the Devatas come to Narasimha. Tatradityascha sadhyascha vishveja marutastatha rudra deva mahatmano vasavascha mahabalaha agamyate mrugendrasya sankasham suryavarchasaha uchus santrastamanasah deva loka kshayarditaha. So the Devatas were worried for this world, that this world would perish, and they asked Narasimha, Jahidev Diteh Putram Danavam Loka Nashanam Durvrittam Asadacharam. And he says, Tam Hyashesham, Tam Hyesham Antakrit Nanyaha. So they say, you should probably finish him off quickly, and then they do Sharanagati again. Ritettvadanya Charanam Nabhutam Nabhavishyati. This is a mantra that we can do. Besides you, there is not and there will never be another refuge for us. So please finish him off quickly. So once they asked, Narasimha Swami roared again with that roar. Patitan Yasurendranam Mrigendrena Mahatmana Simhanadena Mahata Hridayani Manamsicha. All the remaining Rakshasas, their chests were ripped open with that Simhanada itself. With that roar of Narasimha, all the remaining Rakshasas that were alive, their hearts, their minds, system overload, they burst, they died right there itself. Then, very quickly, Devarir Ditijo Dripto Nrisimham Samupadravat. Hiranyakashipu rushed on Narasimha and then Samutpatya Tatas Tikshnaihi Mrugendrena Mahanakaihi Tatronkar Sahayena Vidirya Nihato Yudhi. So with one shloka itself, Vyasa Maharshi has completed. Onkara Sahayena, again with the help of Onkara, Narasimha Swami leapt upon Hiranyakashipu and ripped him apart with his sharp nails and left him dead on the battlefield. So with that, Hiranyakashipu Vadha is done. And then, of course, Mahicha Lokascha Shashi Nabhascha Grahascha Suryascha Dishascha Sarvaha Nadyascha Shailascha Maharnavascha Gataf Prakasham Ditiputra Nashat. So then, Once Hiranyakashipu was killed, Prakriti, this entire world calmed down. Bhumi, the sun, the moon, all the rivers, all the mountains, everything that was agitated before has now calmed down. And then Tato Pramudita Deva Harshayascha Tapodhanaha Tushtuh Vidhai Stotraihi Adidevam Sanatanam. So then all the devatas, they did namaskaram, and the devatas did one stotra, and then Brahma does one stotra. With that stotra we will finish. So the devatas do one specific namaskaram to Narasimha. I mention it because I like it. Yatvaya vihitam deva narasimhamidam vapuh etadevarchayishyanti paraparavido janaha. Oh Deva, this form, this Narasimha form that you have done will be worshipped by the wise men to come. So people who are wise will worship this form of yours. Mrigendratvancha lokeshu sarvasatveshu vo vibho gayanti tvam cha munayo mrigendra iti nityashaha. So then why are you taking upon this lion form? Because lion is Mriga Indra, right? Mriga is any being, any animal, and it is the king of those. In the same way, as a reminder that you are the lord of everything in this world, you have become Mrigendra. Therefore, you will be remembered as this Narasimha. Now, link this shloka to the previous shloka. Someone that understands that you are the protector, the master of this world, someone that understands that you are the greatest in this world, someone that understands that you are the protector of this world, they are the wise people that worship you as Narasimha, right? So, of course, we need to understand that Bhagavan is Srishti Sthitalaya Karaka. Also, we get in Bhagavad Gita, right? Everything, Yadyad Vibhoti Mat Sattvam, Srimad Urjita va, Tattadeva Vagachatvam, Mamatejomsha Sambhavam. Anything beautiful in this world, anything great in this world, anything good in this world is nothing but a manifestation of Bhagavan. So that is the Mrigendratva, which is why in that very same chapter in Gita, Mriganancha Mrigendroham, Bhagavan says, among animals, I am the lion. Right? So to remind us of that, to remind us that he is the most beautiful thing in this world, and also to remind us that Indra is a protector, right? A lord, a master, a controller. So to remind us that he is the master of this world, he is Mrigendra. So that is the significance of the Narasimhavatara. So the fact is, the Devata said, wise people will worship Narasimha Swami. So if we worship Narasimha Swami today and throughout the year, we can count ourselves to be very wise people. And then once the Devatas did that stotra, then Brahma cha Paramapriyatah Vishnu stotra mudairayat. So Brahma then does one stotra, Tvam vyaktascha tatha vyaktaha, Tvattas sarvamidam jagat, Bhavanmaya vayandeva, Bhavan Atma, Bhavan Prabhu. You are both Vyakta and Avyakta. From you this entire cosmos was born. Vayam Bhavanmaya. Mayat is Vikarartha. So like if a pot is Mrinmaya, that means the pot is made up of Mrit. In the same way here, Brahma says, Vayam, we the Devatas are Bhavanmaya. We are made up of you. Right? So we the Devatas, you are the material from which we are made. So in the saying from Upanishad is Sa Atma Anga Anyanya Devata. The self, Atma, Paramatma is the Atma of the body, and the limbs are the Devatas, right? In that same way, Bhagavan is what enlivens all of these. Now think back to what Prahlada saw, right? That all of these were seen within Narasimha. So then it follows that all these devatas consist of Narasimha. One Chaitanya manifests in different ways to run various parts of this world, right? And then there is another list of shlokas. There is a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 shlokas just come with the word para. So you are beyond this, you are beyond this, you are beyond this. Parancha siddhim, paramancha devam, parancha mantram, paramam manascha, parancha dharmam, paramam yashascha, twamahoragyam purushah puranam, parancha satyam, paramam havishcha, param pavitram, paramancha margam, parancha hotram, paramancha yajnam, twamahoragyam purusham puranam. This twamahoragyam Purusham Puranam repeats in the end, but basically everything it says Param, 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 you are the greatest, you are the greatest, you are the greatest of all of this. Paramcha Siddhim, you are the greatest of all the results of tapas. Paramancha Daivam, you are the greatest of all the devatas. Parancha Mantram, you as the mantra are the greatest of all mantras, which is why Narasimha's mantra is called the mantra Raja, right? The king of mantras. Parancha Dharmam, you are the greatest of all dharmas. Tvamahoragrim Purushav Puranam. Purana means primordial. You are the primordial being that is Agriya. Agra means first. Agriya means one who is first and foremost. So then there is one last shloka in here that we'll talk about before we wrap up. Param parasyapi parancha tatparam param parasyapi parancha devam param parasyapi param prabhuncha tvamahoragrim purusham puranam. You are beyond the beyond. You are also beyond the beyond. You are beyond the beyond. You are beyond, and you are also beyond the beyond. That is what the shloka means. Param parasya parancha yat param, param parasya. This is the shloka. You're beyond the beyond, you're beyond the beyond. So whenever you read Mahabharata, and generally whenever there's a shloka that does not make sense to us, we must immediately look to Veda and generally Upanishad. So there is one part of Upanishad which we also later get in Gita almost verbatim. Indriyebhyah parahyarthaha, indriyebhyah param manah, manasastu para buddheratma mahan parah, mahatah param avyaktam, avyaktat purushah parah, purushanna parang kinchit sakashtha sa paragatihi. So first, Indriyas are generally more subtle than something. Indriyas, more subtle than Indriyas is the manas, more subtle than the manas is the buddhi, more subtle than buddhi is avyakta, more subtle than avyakta is purusha. There is nothing more subtle than the purusha. Purushat na parang kinchit. There is nothing beyond the purusha. Sa kashtha sa paragatihi. That is the final climax. That is the final end. Paragati. That is the paramagati of everything. So that is each para here refers to a different part of the shloka. So param parasya means indriyasya paraha. Parancha yat param means arthasya tat param. So all the things, this is beyond that, that is beyond that, that was talked about in this Upanishadic quotation. Those are the things that Bhagavan is beyond here. So Brahma does a very strong stuti, and then tato nadatsu turyeshu nrityanteshu apsarassu cha kshirodasyottaram kulam jagama prabhurishvara. So then, as the apsarasas danced, as all the devatas sung his praise, Narasimha went to the northern border of the Kshirasagara, right? So the Kshirasagara, the Milky Ocean is there. He went to the northern tira of that, the northern border, or the northern Kulam is a, what is it called? Bank. He went to the northern bank of the ocean, and there he did something very strange. Narasimhim tanum tyaktva. He left the Narasimha Sharira there. Sthapayitvacha tadvapuhu pauranam rupamastaya yathasa garudadhvaja अष्टचक्रेण यानेन भूतयुक्तेन शोभिना अव्यक्त प्रकृतिर्देवः. Another पाठांतर is अव्यक्त प्रकृतिर्देवः संस्थानम अगमत् प्रभुः. So I will translate literally and then I'll go into what the Shabdarthas are. So Bhagavan left his Narasimha Rupa there, then got into a vehicle that had 8 wheels and was made up of bhutis, and then went back to his usual state, is the ending shloka here. Now, this is a very strange shloka, because why specify Ashtachakrena and why say Bhuti Yuktena? These are constant reminders that Maharshis do not write just for the sake of writing. Every word that they put has some message embedded within it. So here, the Bhuti Yuktena refers to the Pancha Mahabhutas, the Prithvi, Ap, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha. So this entire sequence is Saguna Ishvara going back to being Nirguna Ishvara. So whatever he is leaving here is the vehicle, right? So whatever goes from A to B is also what is going from B to A. So the vehicle that he is using to go from his Rupa to Arupa state is also the same vehicle that is being used to go from the Arupa state to the Sarupa state, right? So this vehicle is made up of the Panchabhutas. Bhuti Yuktena means the Panchabhutas. Then Ashtachakrena, this vehicle had 8 wheels. So this is a Vedic quotation. Ashtograha, Ashtovatigraha, there is a Vedic quotation here where it says Ashtograha, Ashtavatigraha ityadi shruti prasiddha shabda shrotradi grahatigraha rupaihi anisham chakravat chalyamanena dehena sadhyena. So what it is there is one list of grahas and one list of things called atigraha. For example, Shabda and the ear, Rupa and the eye. So these linkages are all called grahas and atigrahas. These are 8 in number. So these 8 are the wheels. So basically, perceptibility, something that is able to be perceived, needs to have these and needs to have the Panchabhutas. So this is the vehicle that Bhagavan is taking to go back to his Arupa state. And then Avyakta Prakritir Devaha. What does this mean? Prakriti, Ahanka, Bhumirapo Nalo Vayuh Kammano Buddhirevacha Ahankara Itiyam Me Bhinna Prakritirashtadha comes in Gita. So that Ishvara is said to have 8 Prakritis. That Ishvara is said to have 8 Prakritis. The Panchabhutas, Bhumirapalakam, Manas, Buddhi, and Ahankara. So the Panchabhutas, Manas, Buddhi, and Ahankara are the 8 Prakritis that Ishvara has. So among these, Avyakta is also there. So he chose Avyakta as his Prakriti there because he's going back to being more subtle. If he's going back to grossifying, then you need to choose the Panchabhutas. If you're trying to go back to being subtle, then he goes back to the Avyakta Prakriti. These Prakritis become Avyakta, they become unmanifest, and then Samsthanam Agamat Prabhu. So there they write, Nikrishtat Ahanka Avyakta Prakriti api अष्टाकृतिः अहङ्कारात् निकृष्टादेव आत्मा नृसिंहरूपी संस्थानं निर्विशेषचिन्मात्रं स्वरूपं तद्विष्णोः परमं पदम् इति श्रुति प्रसिद्धम् अगमत् is what Nilakantha writes there in the Vyakya. I forgot to mention all the Vyakyas that I have told here, all the explanations I have given can be found in the Nilakantha Vyakya of Mahabharata. Nilakantha Dikshita was a very great Pandita. He wrote a Vyakya for Mahabharata. These are his meanings. He has also written a very nice Vyakya for Shiva Sahasranama Stotra, not Shiva Sahasranama Stotra, Shiva Ashtotra Shatanama Stotra. He has written many other works too, but this Mahabharata Vyakya is one of them. For Shiva Sahasranama Stotra and Mahabharata. So there he writes, so this Ahankara and all these Prakritis are Nikrishta, namely they are a lower form of Paramatma. So he left these behind. So Atma and Narasimha Rupi, the Atma which is Narasimha, here Atma is Ishvara. So Ishvara who is depicted as Narasimha here, let go of that and went back to his samsthana, his natural state, which is Nirvishesha Chinmatra Swarupam. That Chaitanya Matra, the Shuddha Chaitanya that is not accompanied by name and form, which is referred to in the Vedas as Tadvishnof Paramam Padam, Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. So that foremost abode, or that most glorious abode of Vishnu that is seen by Panditas. So he left the Saguna Rupa, which is made up of these Ashta Prakritis, to go to the higher form of the Shuddha Chaitanya, the Nirguna Parabrahman, back to his normal state. So this is the Narasimha Akhyayika that Harivamsha has presented as. Evam Mahatmanatena Narasimha Vapushatada Devena Nihataf Purvam Hiranyakashipuscha Saha. To sum it up, thus, by the Mahatma that was Narasimha, Hiranyakashipu was killed. Iti Shriman Mahabharate Khileshu Harivamshe Bhavishya Parvani Narasimha Pradurbhave Hiranyakashipu Vadha Kathane Sapta Chattvarimshodhyayaha. So that finishes the Narasimha Akhyayika and Harivamsha. So let us all think of this Charitra today. Let us dwell upon this meaning. Narasimha is none other than Parabrahman. That is very clearly stated in our Shastras. So the reason why such stories, why such Puranic legends exist to teach us these is because these Upasanas, we say this every time there is any Parva, but all these Upasanas are meant to take us towards Brahman. There are some Devatas that are specifically denoted just for Brahma Vidya. So in the Panchayatana worship that our Acharyas do, all the Rupas that they worship are specifically Brahma Vidya Devatas. For example, when our acharyas do Shakta worship, it is either Sharada or Lalita. Both of these are devatas that are used specifically for Brahma Vidya. In the same way, Vishnu for our acharyas is first and foremost Narasimha. Narasimha is one of the pradhana devatas of the Pitha. So the Narasimha Salagrama that they have and all that is very important. So which is why on all our acharyas' names, Nrisimha Bharati, Sachidananda Shivabhinavan Nrisimha Bharati, Ugran Nrisimha Bharati, Vruddhan Nrisimha Bharati, Narasimha Giri, Simha Giri, right? So all of these acharyas, specifically the first 10 to 12 acharyas in their yoga pattas, you will see a lot of Narasimha because Narasimha was denoted to be worshipped in this Pitha by Bhagavad Pada because it is so conducive to Brahma Vidya. Vidyaranya Swami writes in his Nrisimha Tapani Bhashya, Nrisimha Brahma Vidyesha Vyakhyata Moksha Siddhaye. This Nrisimha Brahma Vidya is being discussed for the sake of moksha. So whenever Vyasa Maharshi writes this Narasimha Katha, whether it be in in Harivamsha, Narasimha also comes in Mahabharata, in the proper 18 Parvas of Mahabharata. He also comes in the Ashtadasha Puranas, Mantra Shastra, Veda. You will see mentions of Narasimha everywhere, but wherever he comes, wherever his charitra comes, it is meant to take us towards this higher truth that leads us to moksha from samsara. So with namaskarams to our acharyas who are Narasimha themselves and who teaches this Atma Vidya, I bid you all a very happy Narasimha Jayanti and I will take my leave here. Mangalam Stambhadimbhaya Mangalam Mrityamrityave Mangalam Raudrarupaya Narasimhaya Mangalam इत्येषा वाङ्मयी पूजा श्रीमच्छङ्करपादयोरर्पिता तेन देवेशः प्रीयतां मे सदाशिवः श्रीमत्पयोनिधिनिकेतनचक्रपाणे भोगीन्द्रभोगमणिराजितपुण्यमूर्ते योगीश शाश्वत शरण्य भवाब्ध्यपोत Lakshmi Nrisimha Mama Dehi Kara.